Did you hear the news? They did it. They finally did it. I thought Hollywood was a bunch of cowards, but they finally made a film adaptation of Super Tux. Why is he a plumber instead of a penguin, and what the heck is a Mario Brothers? I've been very excited about the Super Mario Bros. Movie. It's actually the first time the Mario series has been adapted into a movie. We'll get to that. And definitely not that. The Mario series barely needs any introduction, if at all. It's the best-selling video game series of all time, and it's even credited for saving the gaming industry. It's also one of my lifelong obsessions. Let's talk about that first. When the Nintendo 64 came out, my dad got it from one of his friends, along with Super Mario 64. And then 5 years later, I was born. Watching my dad play that game when I was a toddler is my first memory involving Mario, and one of my first memories in general, but things got serious when I was 5. I started playing the games, and that Christmas, I got my first ever game console, a red Game Boy Advance SP along with the remakes of Super Mario Bros. 2 and 3. And that's when it started. As much as I enjoyed watching my dad play Mario, this was the point where I really became a fan. And I have since played the games to death, and I also used to dress up as Mario for Halloween every year, and even just in everyday life. I also watched a lot of Mario-related content like the Super Mario Bros. Super Show and Mario YouTube videos. I've collected all of this stuff, and even my 9th birthday was Luigi-themed. So all that, combined with the fact that at least half of the movies I watch are animated, I really wanted an animated Mario movie, just like this one, for so many years. There was the Japan exclusive one and the live action one, but the problem is one of them was Japan exclusive, and the other one was such a failure that it scared Nintendo out of making movies ever again until recently. Also, both of them came out before I was born, so just imagine my reaction when in November of 2014, Sony's email was hacked and it was revealed that they were planning to work with Nintendo on a brand new animated Mario movie. It got cancelled. I would also like to point out that Sony made the PlayStation, which also started out as a collaboration between Nintendo and Sony. If the world was ending and Nintendo and Sony had to save us, we're all dead. Or maybe not, because in January of 2018, it was officially announced that Nintendo was once again making an animated Mario movie, but this time with Illumination. A studio that's been very open about how their biggest priority is to make profitable movies as cheaply as possible, which resulted in movies like Minions. So when the news came out that they would be making the Mario movie, people weren't looking forward to it. And to make matters worse, this was before movies like Detective Pikachu and Sonic proved that it's even possible to make a good video game adaptation. There's also the fact that Mario, by design, has extremely simple plots and characters because it mainly focuses on the gameplay. Most of the time, the characters don't even speak unless it's catchphrases, so adapting that into a movie is as hard as trying to get Nintendo and Sony to collaborate on anything. Literally. I've always held out hope that it could be good because I'm a biased Mario fan and I really wanted it to be good. But also the Mario RPGs are a good example of how to give Mario games more story, and the Super Show is a good example of how to give the Mario characters voice acting. And Illumination is capable of making good movies like Despicable Me, and they were working very closely with Nintendo, who's bent on making sure this never happens again. Nintendo most likely chose Illumination because they're owned by Universal, which made the Nintendo theme parks, but anyway, for the next couple years after the Mario movie was announced, people just kind of forgot about it because there wasn't much more to talk about, but that all changed on September 23rd, 2021. It was a Nintendo Direct like they usually have in September, but towards the end, Mario creator Shigeru Miyamoto came on screen to give us some bombshell announcements about the new Mario movie. Namely, that it was being made with Illumination, it was coming out in December of 2022, but most importantly, Chris Pratt is so cool, and he's gonna be Mario. That's right, we cast celebrities to play Mario characters, deal with it, here's Splatoon 3. People lost their minds, it was like the world ended and Nintendo didn't even team up with Sony to stop it, and they laughed at the casting choices as much as they dreaded seeing the final product. Particularly Chris Pratt Mario. With the rest of the cast you could kind of imagine it working, especially Jack Black Bowser and Charlie Day Luigi, but Chris Pratt is such an odd choice for Mario that it's objectively kind of hilarious. And the way they announced it made it funnier, how they launched into it without any warning, the fact that they used a very dramatic black and white photo of Chris Pratt, and also the way that Miyamoto's translator awkwardly says, "He's so cool." So after that announcement, people of course made memes about it, including me. But at the same time, we were all nervously waiting for the first trailer, because going through a day like that changes you. And then, in April of 2022, it was announced that the movie would be delayed into April of 2023. We didn't get an idea of what the movie would look like until October 4th, when they released this poster. At first I thought this was a guy in a Mario costume and this was an ad for Super Nintendo World, but then I realized what it was, and oh, it's happening. It's also just a nice poster, very colorful and detailed. Favorite poster, least favorite poster. but I think we can all agree that this is what they should have gone with. On October 5th, an Australian McDonald's employee leaked Mario's design for the movie, and they gave him a collar, how dare they. I'd also like to take a second to appreciate how they call it Macca's down there. And then, on October 6th, they finally released a teaser trailer, and it looked really good, other than Chris Pratt Mario, but what really sold it was Jack Black's portrayal of Bowser and the animation. At this point, people were much more optimistic about the movie, and it stayed that way with every new trailer. And then, it was finally released on April 5th, 2023, roughly 6 months after the original teaser, 5 years after the original announcement, and 9 years after the Sony hack. And 30 years after the live-action Mario movie, 37 years after the Japan-exclusive movie, 38 years after Super Mario Bros. Released on the NES, 70 years after Shigeru Miyamoto was born, and 130 years after the invention of film, so there's been a lot of build-up to this movie. Of course I went to see it on opening weekend, I'm only human. When I got there, the excitement was palpable. There were a lot of people, and it felt like all of them were there to see Mario, including a few people who went there dressed as Mario characters. I sat in the front because it was less crowded, but there's a good reason for that. I think being closer to the screen gave me more light to take notes, which is good because I took notes, but I also had to look up awkwardly for the rest of the time, and my neck started to hurt, but I do it for Mario. As for the movie itself, I loved it. It was pretty much exactly what I hoped it would be. Just a nice, fun and simple feel-good movie that stays true to the Mario games as much as it celebrates them, and I'm really happy to see how successful it's been at the box office. Maybe I should also get into the games. But when it comes to how it was received in general, people either seem to love it or hate it. The discussion around whether or not this movie's actually good has been interesting to say the least. In general, the critics didn't like the movie and everyone else did. There is some overlap, of course, but with this movie, people seem to be getting into a lot of arguments about it, like Nintendo and Sony probably. Or so I've heard. I've actually seen more people complain about all the arguments, but that's just me. The biggest complaints I've seen about the movie itself are the fast pace, the very simple plot and characters, and the use of licensed music. And out of those 3 points, I agree with the last one the most. When I first watched it, I found it a little jarring, but I will give them points for using old songs, mostly from the 80s. And this might be giving the movie way too much credit, but sometimes it felt like I was watching a fan-made video. Like there was a part with the Kill Bill theme, and I'm pretty sure I heard that in an SMG4 video once. But yeah, the fact that there was that one scene that they had an original score composed for, but they scrapped it for Take On Me, that's kinda lame. Also the fact that they didn't credit Grant Kirkhope for the DK rap. With the first 2 points about the pacing and characters, I think they're undeniably true, but I didn't really have much of a problem with it, considering how the movie is only an hour and a half long. I thought the pacing was fast enough to be consistently entertaining, but not too fast to the point where it's hard to follow. And one of the main things that made the pacing so fast is the action scenes, which are really good. Back in ye olde announcement days, another concern that I saw people had was that since the main appeal of Mario is the gameplay, watching Mario jump on a screen would be more boring than controlling Mario jumping on a screen, and one way they got around this was by making the action scenes really good, with one of the best ones being the Rainbow Road scene. But in order to have a good movie, you need good characters, and considering how simple they are, I think they did a decent job with it. I like how they gave Mario and Luigi a very strong bond, especially after years of watching internet parodies where they hate each other almost as much as Nintendo and Sony. And I think having Luigi be the one who's kidnapped instead of Princess Peach gives the movie a very solid emotional through line, while at the same time giving Mario and Peach more time to get to know each other. I also like that they made Peach more competent without overdoing it, and I like the interactions between Mario and Peach, they're very cute. But easily the best character in the movie is Bowser. He strikes a perfect balance of being legitimately threatening and also kind of a goofy goober. The movie opens with him overthrowing a kingdom like in the teaser trailer, and he very casually commits false imprisonment and murder on a regular basis because he's literally evil. I miss when animated movies had more unapologetically evil villains. But on the other hand, he has such a hilariously exaggerated crush on Princess Peach. The contrast is funny without being too much of a conflict of interest, and Jack Black is perfect for the role. He's clearly having the time of his life playing this character, and it might even be his best role since Dewey Finn from School of Rock, and that is saying something. The rest of the cast obviously can't even dream to reach those same highs, but they are surprisingly good considering how much we made fun of them. The voice acting feels comparable to the Super Show, which, as I said earlier, is probably one of the best solutions they could have gone with. It's also the first time any of the Mario characters have ever had a voice, unless you count Saturday Supercade. And while we're on the subject of the Super Show, this lady was not voiced by Jeannie Elias, she was voiced by Jessica DeChico. But yeah, Chris Pratt as Mario is actually decent. That's terrifying. I won't say he was amazing or anything, but he did a good enough job to the point where it wasn't distracting. It's especially surprising since, this might sound a little bit judgmental, but judging from the interviews, it doesn't seem like he's played a Nintendo game in the past few decades. Of course, there's the meme where he spent hours of his life stomping on Koopas, and there's an interview where he struggles to name a fire flower, and there's another one where he describes Mario as a wide-eyed dreamer. And that kind of stuff makes me doubt that he knows what a Wii U is. I mean, most people don't know what a Wii U is, but I do, and I have one. Why didn't they cast me as Mario? I will give him this though, he is so cool. But in all seriousness, I'd say what actually defines Mario is his determination to save his loved ones from danger. And the whole wide-eyed dreamer thing where the Mario Bros follow this crazy dream of starting a plumbing business and their dad is disappointed in them, it wasn't outright terrible, but it was a little weird and it felt like something straight out of a meme. Also, is starting a plumbing business really that crazy? I mean, imagine how gross the world would be without plumbers. Why do you think I love Mario so much? Another thing I thought was kinda weird that I haven't seen anyone talk about is that there were a lot of slow-mo shots, almost as many as the Nintendo and Sony jokes I've been making. 19 to be exact, I counted. So yeah, even I'm willing to admit this movie isn't perfect, but I did enjoy it a lot, especially as a Mario fan. There are so many references to the games in this movie that looking for them is honestly half the fun, and they're brilliantly implemented, mostly in the soundtrack. You can tell that the people putting the references there are also Mario fans, for the most part, and not just a marketing team trying to pander to Mario fans. I guess that technically makes it a fan-made movie. Like, they acknowledged the GameCube's existence in 2023. That's amazing, please give us more GameCube re-releases. But I'd say aside from the Mario fan service, this is still a pretty good movie. Like I said earlier, the action scenes are very engaging, the plot works well enough, and the characters are all likable. But also a lot of the humor is pretty good, the songs composed for the soundtrack are really good, and the visuals are gorgeous. And considering how this movie made $1 billion at the box office in less than 4 weeks, they're definitely gonna make sequels, which I am so looking forward to. Because out of the 3 Mario movies that currently exist, I'd say this is definitely the best one. I rewatched the other 2 recently, and the Japanese one is very charming, but it's also very disjointed and it has the most blatant product placement I've ever seen. And it was only released in Japan because I guess Nintendo didn't feel like sharing. Also, they made Luigi wear yellow, and can you really enjoy a movie when Luigi's wearing yellow? And then there's the live-action Mario movie, which I've actually reviewed before, and upon rewatch, I was surprised by how much I still like it. It doesn't work at all as an adaptation of the Mario series, and the acting isn't very good. In fact, the actors were drunk most of the time because they hated working on the movie. But it is definitely enjoyable on an ironic level, and the world building is actually genuinely pretty good in my opinion. Also, Luigi calls someone a biscuit head. This movie's a masterpiece. But I will say I was a little too forgiving to the movie when it comes to being faithful to the games. Sure, there weren't nearly as many Mario games back then, but there was Super Mario Bros. 1, 2, 3, and World, the games that laid the foundation for the series. There's also the fact that the Japanese Mario movie, the Super Show, and the Super Mario Adventures comics all came out before this movie, and they're all very faithful to the games. Especially the Super Mario Adventures comics. Both the Japanese movie and the Super Show released before Mario's color palette was swapped, but this was released after. And ever since then, his character design hasn't really changed at all, except for the fact that they gave him a collar. But if you were to release these comics today, people wouldn't even flinch. In fact, this copy that I have is a reprint from 2016. There's also a few similarities between the comic and the movie, like how it's very fast-paced and energetic and fun, and even the characterization is pretty similar. It also has great visual comedy. This art style is very fun and expressive, and I wish I could see it fully animated. I mean in 2D. So if you enjoyed the movie, I'd also recommend you check out the comics or the fan dub on YouTube, which is also really good. There's 2 more things I'd like to mention, but I'm not exactly sure how to segue into them, so I'm just gonna say them. One, when I went to see the movie for the first time and the Barbie trailer came up, people audibly groaned. So naturally, that was the first note that I took, because I guess America loves Mario and hates Barbie, even though they're wrong. Barbie Life in the Dream House is way funnier than it has any right to be, and also, that joke about rollerblades in the trailer has me sold. 1 ticket to the Barbie movie, please. Why? Rollerblades. And 2, I wanted this movie so much that I was willing to make it myself if necessary. I was crazy. In 2014, the year of the Sony hack, I had the urge to learn how to use the 3D animation software Blender, so I did, and I eventually made this background with it. There was no stopping me. But back when I was just starting out, I found this website called the Models Resource, which is a resource for 3D models that people extract from games. So I thought to myself, hey wait, Mario's a game and I'm learning Blender. Therefore, I'm gonna make a cinematic masterpiece. But here's the thing, usually animated movies take huge teams of CalArts graduates working non-stop for 5 years, and I was a 13-year-old sharing a very slow computer with my siblings. Obviously, I was never going to make something as high quality as Pixar, that's insane, but I was at least reaching for the quality of fan-made Mario animations made using software like Source Filmmaker. The reason I didn't just use Source Filmmaker is because by the time I'd figured out how to download it, I had already gotten used to Blender. But probably the biggest pitfall with the project is the fact that I never really started it. I just had no idea how to write it, but more importantly, the models resource has multiple models of each Mario character, and I had no idea which ones to choose. At the very least, I got some test animations done, and I submitted a few models to the resource, but this project was just too ambitious for its own good, so I'm really glad Illumination copied me. In conclusion, they better make a 3D Space Cadet pinball movie.